All right. Peace and blessings, brothers and sisters. Once again, this is the Cosmocentric Mystic. I'm Akwahum. Um, and I wanted to talk to you today. Right now, it's September 5th, 4:22 in the morning. All right. I wanted to get this out before the events of the day transpired, um, primarily because I did some readings. Remember, if you've been watching my channel, I developed an oracle system as well as teach meditation related to it. Um, and I did a reading on these events, and I wanted to get the readings out today before the events of today transpired so I could comment on it later and show the effectiveness of the system at that time, but also just to educate a little bit because this has been on my mind recently and I wanted to talk about it. So what I wanted to talk about today was, in fact, armed resistance and the Black struggle over the last 100 years. Now, in particular, I am just going to talk about the things that are kind of popularly known in consciousness and in modern media, such as, I'm going to discuss a little bit about the Tulsa race riots. I'm going to touch upon the Black Panther Party, and I'm going to talk about the Deacons for Defense before I get to NFAC. Now, the reason that I do this is because the Black community, people of African descent in America, have been engaged in resistance to the tyranny of Western imperialism and capitalistic expansion ever since its inception. We didn't just walk off the boats and say, cool, a new place to live, work. We were forcibly taken by African collaborators, not understanding the results of their actions, poor whites, going along with the dominant system set up by the members of their ruling elite, and then greedy capitalists looking to expand their fortune. So those of us that were brought to the American shores, we were survivors. Our ancestors were survivors. They had the genes to survive the most horrific trials and tribulations that a human could ever go through. They survived the horrors of the slave strongholds, the so-called castles. I was in the Elmina Castle in Ghana. The Elmina stronghold is what it is. It's definitely a stronghold. I don't know why they call it a castle. It gives it some sort of ring of nobility. It is not a castle. It is a stronghold. It's the Elmina jail. It was savage. It was heart-wrenching to understand and see the room that they would hold brothers and sisters in before transport. I mean, brothers and sisters was in that room. They would eat there. They would defecate there. They would have their menses there. They would urinate there. They would urinate on each other. It was insane. People definitely were driven insane, living in such horrific, horrid conditions. And so the ancestors that came through were extremely strong. And they also not only survived the slave dungeon strongholds, but then they also survived the inhuman treatment of the Middle Passage. The Middle Passage is the trip between Africa and the Americas, which typically took 3 months, and it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible the way they packed our ancestors down in the bottom of the slave ships, with barely a foot or two between them, and they lived in that manner and capacity. And they would give them slop buckets, a handful of food to eat each day, and take them up top so that their legs wouldn't cramp up. So they would. It's absolutely horrible. And our sisters, what they did to our sisters on the boats over there, the savage lust of these people. It was a terrible tragedy, and that's why it's called the Ma'afa, the terrible tragedy. Anyway, in all those places, at all times, there was armed struggle, and resistance. We didn't just get up and say, "Hey, I'm gonna walk over here." My karma relates that I need to go through this, so I'm gonna go through this. Nah, we fought at all points in time. So that's that right there. That understanding is a misunderstanding. If that's a belief that you have. So I hope it isn't. I really hope it is not a belief that you have. So in every year, and then when we got to these shores, in every year that there was chattel slavery, there was an African rebellion against their situation. So at no time were we just complicit in our situation. Now a lot of us figured out how to go along, to get along, calling upon these ideas of Willie Lynch in our minds, that that the slave masters put in our heads in order for us to just move. Because by and large, people are just trying to make it out, trying to make it happen. And then you have people that are not going to deal with it, not going to go along with it. So those are the brothers and sisters that engaged in an armed struggle. Then you had the brothers and sisters that said, duck this, I'm out. And that's the brothers and sisters that traveled along the Underground Railroad. You have our white allies back in the day, operating the Underground Railroad, helping the brothers and sisters get to a place where they could experience a better life, so to speak. Some of our brothers and sisters that were free, engaged in slavery at the same time, but that was the method of business and back in the day. And then on top of that, many of those brothers and sisters that did own slaves, they typically bought their family from slavery. So it's not as clear cut and dry as people think. Anyway, there's never been a time that people just sat back and accepted it. We've always had warriors at all points in time. Now, what I'm going to go over is definitely not definitive. I just did not have a lot of time to put into this. I've been extremely busy. And so then these presentations take a while to put together and do research for. So they're basically book reports, which most teachers in most colleges will give you a few weeks to do a chapter, to report on a chapter. So it takes a minute to put these together. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about with you today is going to be my understanding of armed resistance over the last 100 years in American soil. So this report, so basically I'm going to go and talk about Tulsa, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and the Deacons for Defense. And then I'm going to touch upon NFAC. So in Tulsa, Tulsa, Oklahoma is a massacre. A massacre of Black people in the town of Tulsa, Oklahoma, on Memorial Day weekend, right, in 1919, I believe. So the history of Tulsa is this, right? So Tulsa there was oil found in Oklahoma, right? And then there was already Africans that were escaping slavery that were in that area. And so because it was a booming economic, prosperous area, everybody benefited. That's how Tulsa, became what it became. That's why, that's how the African Americans in that area became so wealthy, was off of the oil. So they were wealthy, so the whites were extremely wealthy. Anyway, there was a street, Greenwood, Archer, and Pine, that kind of divided, the Blacks from the whites. That was the dividing streets in the downtown area. That's where the Gap Band got their name, and that's actually the meaning of the song. You dropped a bomb on me, baby. You dropped a bomb on me. You better turn. Whatever. I wasn't one to listen to music when I was younger, so I don't know a lot of things, but I do know that. Anyway, the young man was an elevator operator, and who worked in this building. And then there was some sort of situation that happened between him and a white girl, and he ran, right? So he ran away from the situation. He ran, and the officers came to arrest him and take him to jail. Well, when word got out in the town that a black man had assaulted a white girl. An angry mob kind of, a lot of, Europeans got together, European Americans got together, and they were like, let's lynch this boy, let's put him in his place. Anyway, from that, you had a group of brothers come down to the jail with guns, saying they're about to protect this young man, right? So, and this infuriated the white people. They're like, how could these niggas have guns and come up to us, right? Anyway, what they don't realize and what they don't tell you, because I got some of this. I have to be honest. I got some of this from Wikipedia. Some of it I already know. In Wikipedia, they don't tell you that these black men had served in World War One. So in World War One, these black men, many black men, felt cognitive dissonance from World War One because they found themselves in the foreign soil shooting other white men for their country. And then they came back to the United States and saw the discrimination and hate that they faced here. And they were like, what? I was over in Europe shooting white people. Now I'm back here having to take this shit. So, excuse my language. So anyway, when they got back though, so they were already trained on how to do what they did. You understand? They had experience with the gun, and so they were there. They knew that they could protect this young man. Anyway, but the image and the presence of black men with guns infuriated the white mob, and this set them off. Anyway, they said there's a black revolution happening, and they called in the National Guard. That night they all got infuriated. It was fuel to the flame of the fires that burned inside the hearts of the white people in that area. And they went on this intense massacre. They killed hundreds, if not thousands, of black people that lived in Tulsa and totally decimated and destroyed the city because there's the fear of armed rebellion of African Americans in the white mind. And so ultimately they ended up calling in the National Guard and they bombed the city. They just bombed the city. It was crazy. It was totally crazy. People lost lives, family, property, and it has been etched into the consciousness of Black African Americans for the last 100 years. This tragedy, this horror upon horrors that was experienced. It's part of the Red Summer of 1919, so to speak. And we currently are experiencing a Red Summer, so to speak, in 2020. So history repeats itself. It left hella people homeless. And, hella personal property just destroyed. That just decimated them. Just totally decimated them. Now, so that's a brief kind of understanding. I'm going to give an extremely brief understanding of the Black Panther Party because that in and of itself takes its, could be its own presentation. Anyway, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was founded by two members, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, right? So Huey, he was self-taught, you understand? So he dropped out of school and he taught himself how to read, and he went through several colleges in order to achieve his degree. Ultimately ended up at Merritt College. He was heavy in the Black studies and the Black consciousness movement of the time. And so he fought to get African American studies on the college campus. This was prior to the formation of the Black Panther Party. This was when he was in his early 20s. Anyway, at the college, he would go on to meet Bobby Seale. Now, Bobby Seale was ex-military, who was discharged and found himself at Merritt College, where he met Newton. Anyway, so my belief, and this isn't necessary, even though I met with Bobby Seale, I've been just real briefly once when he was in Seattle. Many of my mentors were Panthers from Seattle, and I met with Bobby Seale there when I think Catherine Clear, I forget her name at the moment, when she was running for, she came up to talking, we were celebrating the 50th anniversary, or the 40th anniversary of the Black Panther Party in 2006. And I was helping to organize that with Aaron Dixon, Elmer Dixon, and Ron Coleman. Anyway, the Black Panther, the idea for guns, I believe, came from Bobby Seale. And this gal, they used it, in an instance. They organized the brothers, and they used that image in an instance of police brutality, which is a consistent theme in our community. I mean, even the current armed resistance struggle is a result of police brutality on our community, which is a legacy of the slave patrols. And so, anyway, ultimately, however, Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, well, Bobby still survived the Panther Party and would go on to do different things. I mean, he went through several different legal battles. There was one case it was really pivotal, because he was accused of taking the life of an informant in his organization. That's one thing that our community really suffers from. And we have many of our activist leaders have what's known as, what I have come to discover to be called, as like a PTSD in relationship to, like, these basically Black people who will work for white organizations in order to undermine Black progress, informers, and we have a ton of that going on in this next presentation, talking about, in fact, in the current situation we're going under, or where we find ourselves under our end. And so anyway, but he ended up beating the case, and, lived on to be, lived in society and made his moves. Huey would go on to get his PhD and, continue his discussion in the struggle for the liberation of African people. However, he was taken out of existence in I think it was 1989. And some people say in a drug deal. Who knows? The government does what the government does. Anyway, that brings us to the next group. Well, they had the main thrust of the Black Panther Party was their 10-point program, and their 10-point program, had several points to it. This is what they were organizing for. They wanted freedom and the power to determine the destiny of their own communities. They wanted employment for their people. They wanted to end capitalism. They wanted to have decent housing for their people. They wanted decent education for their people. They wanted bread and housing and education. They wanted freedom for everybody that was in jail. And they wanted to end police brutality. That was real deal. They wanted health care and an immediate end to all wars of oppression. They wanted to stop the spread of capitalism, the oppression of, first world countries. And that was their program. That's what they were fighting for. That's what they were organizing for. That's what they were in the community for. It was very clear cut. They wanted to read it. And then when you look at them, I mean, these were basically kids, like what it is today. These Black Lives Matter movement people. I'm pretty sure the NFAC people, they're basically kids who have a lot of energy, who have a lot of willpower to redefine how they interact with society. And they're trying and experimenting new ways of being. And this is what the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was doing. I remember talking with Aaron Dixon and all of them, and they're just telling me these stories about how they were trying to live differently than what has been traditionally lived. And also the other thing is their critique, like the current environment we see, like my other videos on this, I got heavily critiqued by these other people. I don't know if they were Russian spies or whatever people, I don't understand, I don't know. So the military type people always critiques the intellectual elite, so to speak, are the intellectuals, the people who sit back, who are engaged in cultural consciousness, and who see that their participation in liberation requires an intellectual approach as well. But and then the military brother, I mean, there was this schism, you know. Now, and I was really so, people, the Panthers, when I was in Seattle, right? And I was hardcore like a Kwanzaa, and I still am. I still celebrate Kwanzaa, right? But I never understood why, Aaron didn't celebrate Kwanzaa, and he said that's because Maulana Karinga was responsible for the death of one of his friends, and so there was a schism that happened in I forget University of I'm trying to remember the name, but it was a California university between Maulana Karinga's organization, which was really kind of weird. Karinga was known to be an FBI agent, CIA spy of some sort back then, but his group was called the United Slaves, and they believed in the cultural reclamation of African consciousness. I don't understand why he called it slaves. So that was, I guess it's still similar to the African descendants of slavery group in modern day. But United Slaves, that's such a derogatory term. Anyway, the Black Panthers and the U.S., the US organization, as they would call it, had a shootout in I want to say Berkeley College. Yep, Berkeley College cafeteria, and I think it was Bunchy Carter that got shot. And so anyway, there was a schism that happened there because Karinga was about cultural reclamation and the Panthers was about armed struggle. And that clash happened right there. And so I ultimately came to see, and then I came, respect for Karinga and his work and his continued efforts in educating the Black mind. And so that's powerful what he's done. His history as an agent of the government, I haven't confirmed that personally myself, so I can't say anything. I can say I had suspicions of what's going on when he sold the rights to Kwanzaa to Hallmark to make cards for Kwanzaa. It's like whatever, but understanding is that we live in a capitalistic system, which is something many groups don't understand. Like we still have to make our way in the system. We just have to make our way. And so that, I get it. Karinga, sold Kwanzaa to Europeans for some cash, so he could support him and his family. We know many people that do that. Many of our entertainers constantly sell this image of the Black destructive character being man, the Black male destructive character to the general society, which helps promote this idea that we're animals. And they do this to make money because this is what white America wants to see Black America act like. So it's the same concept. Sell your people out to make money, or sell something to make money. That's what happened. And so now the Deacons for Defense is not as well known. It wasn't popularized, but this was a Southern movement. And so ultimately this is this is a Wikipedia, research. So just roll with me here. African Americans were harassed and attacked by, KKK members in Milltown, Louisiana in 1964. They torched churches, a Mason Hall, and a Baptist church. Ernest Thomas and Frederick Douglass founded the Deacons for Defense in November of 1964 to protect civil rights workers, their families, and the Black community against the local KKK. That's what they were doing, right? So, and most of the Deacons were veterans were veterans with combat experience from the Korean War and World War II, right? So we have once again military training. These people had gone overseas and shot and killed other people and came back and understand people are just people, right? So Thomas grew up in the segregated decades after the white-dominated state legislature had, imposed these Jim Crow laws down in the South. Now, following his military service in World War II, he came to believe that political reforms had to be secured by force rather than moral appeal. So he had the same critique that the Black Panthers came to, that this current NFAC brother came to. Like, you have to force it up on these people because they don't understand appealing to consciousness. They just don't get it. And so he brought the heat to them. In 1964, during Freedom Summer, in a period of extensive voter education and organizing for registration, um, CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, established a Freedom House in Jonesboro. It became a target of the Klan. So the Klan targeted Black people organizing there for voter registration. And then they hated that there were white allies, once again, that were staying there. And because of and they called this place Freedom House, where they were staying. And because of repeated attacks on this place, the Black community decided to organize and defend it. So this is how the Deacons for Defense emerged, right? And they were called the Deacons of Defense and Justice, officially formed when two groups were operating in Jonesboro to protect African Americans. So there was a movie on it as well. This is what, you can just read it. They were formed to protect the civil rights workers, just like the current conversation is being structured and framed. But you're being told, by the NFAC leader that it's the first time this has happened. No, this has repeatedly happened. And apparently, the common thread and theme here is military service radicalizes the African consciousness, or expands the African consciousness to see that if they could go across seas and enact violence to bring people across seas, they could come home and enact violence to people that enact violence and injustice on us. That seems to be the common theme that we're seeing here in the last 100 years. We see it in Tulsa, we see it with Bobby Seale in the Black Panther Party, and we see it with Thomas Kilpatrick, or Frederick Douglass Kilpatrick, whatever. And the Thomas brother with the Deacons of Defense. So understand that this is the legacy. History repeats itself, right? Like, one thing that I've noticed in my walk is that, even personalities come through energies. And there's only so much, just like there's only so many energies that exist in the universe. It's not infinite, it's finite. And actually all it is just a restructuring of certain energies. I don't know if you understand. I mean, people have understood that since time immemorial. You have a doppelganger out there, several doppelgangers, as a matter of fact, out there, because there's a limited amount of genetic code for spirit to choose from. And so then you will have people who come and look like you. Like, that's how they have these, these stand-ins for, royalty in order for protection, because there's only so many ways in which, genes can be combined in order to produce so many different bodies. There's only so much. It's a limited amount. Just like there's a limited amount of personalities or personal energies to choose from. And so this warrior energy within the consciousness of people is always there. But just like there is the warrior energy of, the radicalized Black mind, there's also the warrior energy of the white mind. And they tend to clash, and it tends to get ugly, and there tends to be death. And so, I needed to get this out this morning because I did several readings on NFAC, right? Now, remember, I created an oracle system, or developed an oracle system based upon geomancy, which is a worldwide system of oracle readings. You can find it in India, you can find it in Africa as Ifa, you can find it in Europe, you can find it in Southeast Asia, you can find it in America. What I've been able to do is put it together in such a way to make it more easily accessible. So it is in a card format, and it gives extremely accurate readings to a T, right? So I did several readings on NFAC because I wanted to see. I was like, I did my previous videos on NFAC, and like, I just didn't do a reading, and I should have done readings before I even just opened my mouth, and it would have gave me, some of the answers that I needed. So the first reading I did, I asked, is Grandmaster Jay working for the government? And I got River's End, right? So this reading confused me to a degree because it revealed that there is the presence of like feminine or social energy surrounding either the formation or directly influencing Grandmaster Jay and the group in general, right? So this was confusing because like I was expecting I was actually kind of anticipating another type of energy, not something related to the social forces or something related to the divine, or something related to feminine energy being there. Anyway, but as later on, as I thought about the feminine energy related to the formation, is Grandmaster Jay working for the government? I was like, oh, this is a Breonna Taylor energy. But remember, the reading is River's End. And so ultimately, the answer seems to be affirmative. But something is going to end soon. So the full, something about this situation is going to come to, I don't know if it's going to be a dramatic end or whatever. So my next question was, what are the energies surrounding Grandmaster Jay? And this just confirmed my first reading because it's social contracts. That was what came up. And so there, Grandmaster Jay is responding to the social atmosphere that's out here. Now, is he responding or he's being led to respond? I don't know, but it's responding to the social environment. It's responding to the to society's vibration right now on what's going on. Now, this doesn't mean that he's good or bad. It's just a response. That's what my question. What are the energies surrounding Grandmaster Jay? Responding to this social COVID, Black Lives Matter situation that we're dealing with right now. So now the third reading I did was, what are the motivating factors? What is motivating him for the Black community? And I got beginning sorrow. Ultimately, that indicates a union. So he wants to bring the Black community together. Now, remember, I can't see, I'm not talking about, who's behind him or whatever, or if there's any behind him, just what is the motivating factors. And it's to begin, to bring the Black community together, like to begin something, to bring the community together for union. However, this is going to lead to a situation which is going to have some sort of sorrowful outcome. So that's kind of like interesting. Like, you want to be wary of this. It's not really one-to-one, a good look, so to speak. Remember my first reading, is he working for the government? I got River's End. Then now it's begetting sorrow. So I was like, okay, is there something related to, there's going to be an ending here. There's going to be some sort of sorrow involved, surrounding this brother, right? The reading I did, the third reading, was I wanted to talk about, this is why I had to get this out today. I wanted to talk about the events that'll take place in Louisville today, right? And this reading was Mergence Lost, indicating that there's going to be a bringing together of forces in order to push forward one's will. However, there's going to be some sort of loss incurred today. I hope that's not lives lost. So we'll see. Maybe it might be, loss of the energy that's been pulled, that's been galvanized. But there's going to be a lot of energy, a lot of male, energy related to this situation. So we got to see what's going on. A lot of forceful energy here. So I hope it doesn't mean conflict and clash, but we'll see. My next reading was me, honestly, it is supporting, in fact, because I saw a brother that I took to be genuine. I looked through his feed. I forget who he was, but he's, you know, some brother who talked about he's a part of NFAC, and he seemed very genuine in his presentation. And he's made me aware of, you know, there are still African Americans who are into guns, and, you know, black militias are there. I saw this other interview by this guy, the American Doofus, who interviewed another person, an African American brother who's a part of a black militia. And that was cool to see, because that needs to be there. That energy is there. I'm a brother that walks the spiritual path and is looking for answers to our situation on the spiritual level. And there are other brothers, you know, who see answers to our situation on the level of force, and that's where they're at. But the reading I got for myself supporting, in fact, was Sorrowful End. And that reading indicates that there's, you know, some sort of sorrow that has been experienced and is going to lead to an end. And I'm going to go through a lot of changes if I do this. So that's a negative reading for me. So that's a no. I'm not going to definitely be supporting, in fact. And we'll see. You know, I don't know. I'm questioning now whether or not he's an agent, and we'll see. But I am in current research. I've been watching Morris World TV a lot, and he did bring up a good point at one point, and that there were actors surrounding Grandmaster Jay in DC. I didn't understand what he was talking about at first, but I get it now. So what I'm going to do with you now is I'm going to share my screen with you, and then discuss what Grandmaster Jay is talking about, right? I mean, the Morris World TV brother's talking about. He's talking about this sister right here, right? So this was the June 12th exhibit of, you know, supposedly Black Panthers were rising up now because of the riots, right? These were actors. This sister's an actor, this brother's an actor, this guy's an actor, this guy's an actor. It's well known. You can look up the Black Panther party, the Black Panther presentation on June 12, 2020. These people are actors, right? But this sister right here is the one that's in question. She's identifiable as this person here. I think it's the hair and the light skin. And so, you know, the skin tone is a bit different. If you look at this sister, her skin tone is more golden. She's thin. This sister is also thin, but her skin tone is kind of bright yellow. The hair is very similar. Now I was looking at the forehead features. I mean, I felt like it's like crazy, but I had to find out. The forehead is from a distance. It's shiny. I don't know if she's got on oil, baby oil, and lotion here. Maybe this is just her ashy self. I don't know. So, but the forehead kind of is the same to a degree. You know, I can't really increase that, but the forehead's kind of the same. And so I was just really trying to see, are these the same people? I'm really trying to look. I don't know. I began to look at the arms to see if the arms were similarly structured. This person has the mask on, so she's definitely hiding herself. People can make themselves look to be different. I don't know. But this was the question, you know, is this the same sister? And from this angle, it looks like it could be. She's wearing glasses here. She's got the same hairstyle here. Are these actors? You know, are these actors? Recently, the Morris World brother did an interview with the Stone Mountain organizer, and the organizer said these people were falling out. She said it was something very funny and suspicious about their gathering at Stone Mountain. So he said they weren't prepared. They were wearing high heels in March, and they were falling out all over the ground because they're wearing black in the summer. And so they're not being really intelligent on that, but they're still they're having to fit the motif of a militant, you know, of militancy. And so because they weren't, and then because they're suspect, you know, it's a possibility that this is a government, you know, run organization. And listening to the way the brother speaks, considering the Black Identity Extremist Terrorist Act that was put into place in 2017 and how this person is able to get away. See, the other Black militias were quiet. You don't know they exist. But this person is being vocal. His threats are very vocal. He's done enough to be labeled a Black identity extremist, but he's still free walking around getting help from the cops. So this is the questionable actions of this guy. But the interesting thing is that I've seen other Black militias, you know, and so I'm looking at that, and it's you know, that's something that needs to happen. I mean, when you study the tree of life, that's the Heruti Ogun energy, and it's there, it's needed. It's always been there in every society. Every society has its warriors. Every single society that ever existed had its warriors. Every single person has warrior energy. So they just manifested on an extreme level. So that's my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be up with you later. Peace and blessings.